All right, everyone, welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful and, most radical techniques we have in our beekeeping toolkit. We're talking about the starvation ration method. Now, look, it's an intense procedure, no doubt about it. But when a colony is right on the brink, this can be the one thing, the only thing, that brings it back from the edge. So, let's get right into it. I really want this quote to stick in your head through this whole explainer. Think about it. We are not talking about some casual little trick or routine task you do on a Saturday. No. This is a precise surgical intervention for when a colony's life is genuinely on the line. It's the last resort. So, to use the scalpel effectively, you've got to understand the patient, right? And that means understanding the bee's biology. A lot of beekeepers, they just follow the steps mechanically, but knowing why it works, well, that's what separates a successful rescue from a catastrophic failure. Okay, first up, let's talk about hive psychology. When you shake an entire colony into an empty box, you are creating this intense, artificial state of homelessness. And that existential stress, it instantly hits the reset button on any swarming intentions. The colony forgets all about building queen cells. Its focus narrows down to just one thing: survival. And this is the truly elegant part of the whole method. As you're shaking them, the bees do what they always do in an emergency. They fill up their honey crops with honey from the hive. It's their emergency rations. Now, if they've got a disease like foul brood, that honey is contaminated. But over the next 1 to 3 days of starvation, they completely digest that honey. And in doing so, they digest the pathogens along with it. They literally sterilize themselves from the inside out. It's incredible. Now, what about a hopelessly queenless colony? You know the kind, with laying workers that will kill any new queen you try to introduce. Well, the physiological shock of starvation causes a massive hormonal crash. Their developed ovaries actually regress, and the whole colony gets a biological reset. It becomes receptive to a proper, fertile queen once again. It's a hard reboot for the social structure. And after they've been through all this, when you finally put the bees onto fresh foundation, their wax glands are just in overdrive. It's a primal, natural response, exactly like a swarm that's just found a new home. They are primed for a colossal building effort, what I like to call a wax explosion. A strong, healthy colony can draw out an entire deep box of foundation in just a handful of days. It's a sight to see. You know, this question comes up a lot, and the honest answer is no, it's not. A fast of 24 to 72 hours is physiologically safe for a honeybee. What's truly cruel is letting a colony slowly and painfully die from a devastating disease, which can then spread and wipe out your entire apiary. This method, when used correctly, is an act of mercy. So now that we understand the why, and we've talked about the ethics, let's get down to the when. This is not a tool for fixing minor problems. This is for emergencies, plain and simple. There are really only 3 situations where this level of intervention is justified. Okay, first and foremost, for treating American or European foul brood, this is its #1 job. Second, for a colony that is stuck in a deep, stubborn swarm mode, where you've tried everything else and nothing has worked. And third, to save a colony that has developed laying workers and is otherwise completely doomed. And listen to me on this one, I cannot stress this enough. If you even suspect foul brood, you must get a professional diagnosis from a lab. Guessing is not an option here. A mistake doesn't just cost you one hive. It can cost you every single hive you own. Be smart. Get it tested. All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty, the practical side. The procedure itself is a 3-stage operation, and let me tell you, every single detail matters. Preparation and precision are absolutely everything if you want this to work. Before you even think about touching the bees, get all your gear ready. You're going to need a big, well-ventilated swarm box, a wide funnel, a completely clean and sterilized hive, a full set of frames with foundation only, that's key, a queen cage, a water sprayer, some 1-to-1 sugar syrup for after the procedure, and a sealed bag or box for those old contaminated combs. So, the entire process breaks down into these 3 distinct phases. First is isolation. This is where you shake the bees off their old combs to create that artificial swarm. Second is starvation, the critical waiting period where that biological reset happens. And finally, #3, relocation, when you move them into their new clean home to start fresh.
Now this slide shows you the most critical variable of all, timing. How long you keep them in the box depends entirely on what problem you're trying to solve. For a deep swarm state, 24 hours is usually plenty. For laying workers, you're looking at 24 to 48 hours. But for fowl brood, you absolutely need the full 48 to 72 hours to make sure they've processed all that contaminated honey. And remember this rule, write it down. It is always better to underhold them than to overhold them.
We've covered the what, the why, and the how. So now let's talk about how to avoid complete disaster. I'm going to walk you through the 5 most common and absolutely fatal mistakes that will doom this entire procedure if you're not careful. Mistake number 1, putting any frames with brood into the new hive. The whole mechanism works because of that feeling of utter homelessness. It's the shock that triggers the reset. If they find brood in their new home, they don't feel homeless, and the whole therapy fails. It has to be a completely clean slate, no exceptions. The second fatal error is overheating. A crowded box of stressed out bees generates a tremendous amount of heat. Without excellent ventilation, they will literally cook themselves in their own humidity. This condition, called zapinary, is irreversible. Once it happens, it's over. So use a spacious box, make sure there's airflow, and keep them in a cool, dark place like a basement or a cellar. Now, this is an absolute non-negotiable rule. Do not feed the bees during the starvation period. I know it feels wrong, but giving them any syrup completely negates the whole point. They won't consume the contaminated honey in their crops, and the infection will just carry over to the new hive. So let me say it again, you start feeding them only after they have been relocated to the new hive. Think about it. Producing wax takes an incredible amount of energy, and it requires a cluster temperature between 33 and 35 degrees Celsius. If you relocate them into their new hive during a cold snap, they just won't be able to generate the heat they need to draw out that new comb. The whole recovery will stall out, so wait for warm weather. And now for the most critical mistake of all, the one that will undo all of your hard work. Using even a single frame of old drawn comb, the bees will find those cells and deposit the last little bits of honey from their crops in there, reintroducing the infection right back into their clean home. So the rule is simple and it is absolute. Only foundation. No drawn comb, no compromises on this ever. Okay, if you avoid those 5 mistakes and you follow the protocol with precision, the prognosis is actually excellent. You're not just saving a colony, you are giving it a completely new life. So let's take a look at what that recovery path looks like. So on day 1, they'll cluster up and get right to work drawing wax. By day 2 to 4, the queen is usually out of her cage and inspecting her new home. Within a week, you should see the first new eggs. That's how you know the colony is back to business. In 2 to 3 weeks, you'll see your first frames of sealed brood. And by week 6, that colony can be fully recovered and even productive again. So to wrap it all up, your success really boils down to these 4 pillars. First, be calm and precise. Follow the plan, don't rush it. Second, strict timing. Remember, it's better to underhold than to overhold. Third, absolute cleanliness, a sterilized hive and foundation only. And finally, provide warmth and plenty of feed after you relocate them to fuel that incredible wax explosion. Look, this method is a serious tool, but it's a tool that empowers you to perform what can feel like a miracle. In your hands, this scalpel can transform a colony that's on the verge of death into a vibrant, healthy, and productive hive. Master this, and you'll be ready for just about any challenge that beekeeping can throw at you.